just following up on the Secretary General's comment, really technology companies with your size is becoming geopolitical players. Has that changed how Microsoft takes decision? You know, in the board of directors of Microsoft, is it also thinking not only what is good for business, but also what is good for NATO, what is good for European peace and security, what is good for transatlantic cooperation? How does that translate into the business decisions you take?
Yeah, and it's something we talk about in our, basically executive meetings all the time, every single week. It really is interesting because we are such an underpinning. If you think about cyber as another great example, we've published a lot of reports, about the work that we've done in Ukraine, basically helping the government remain sovereign even if their data centers, were under duress, in addition to helping thwart cyber attacks. It is something that's super important for us. We have to make sure that we're protecting all the users of our software. And like I mentioned, this public-private cooperation, we have a deep sense of responsibility around that. And then it also gets super interesting for us because, once again, we can make decisions, if we do them wrong, that could actually cause geopolitical escalations. And we shouldn't be doing that, right? Deciding what works where and, who gets what. Once again, I don't think that a private company should be making those decisions. So a lot of the conversations we have is about how do we engage with regulators, how do we figure out a way to, but again, responsibly and ethically use the technology and introduce it, and then make decisions around that so that the folks that are elected are the ones that are making those calls. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that and how we actually engage with that. We welcome that further engagement as well. No private company, not just mine, no company should be doing that unilaterally.
Thank you. Professor Knight, let me turn to you. In the beginning, when we had a show of hands of who was an optimist and who was a pessimist, I believe I saw your hand as a slight pessimist. Could you talk about how do you see the development of quantum technologies as a peace project? What would it take for it to become a peace project?
Okay. Investment in any technology that's relevant to defense and security is a way of providing assurance that we can live in a peaceful society. That's the whole point. That as long as we do invest in technology that could be transformative in terms of capability, allows us to defend our citizens so that they can live a peaceful world. Quantum is part of that. It's an enabler. And one of the things that we should be sure about is that what quantum technology does, it provides assurance that we can make the world a more resilient place. So resilience is underpinning so much of what we're trying to do in quantum technology. Resilience against, for example, GPS outage, the ability to navigate. We can provide new ways of quantum navigation that gives us a backup. Our timing systems can be made resilient. Our ways in which we look at the world around us. These are peace projects in the sense that they are assuring our population that we are doing something about making their lives sustainable and resilient. So that's my first comment. The other part of it, in terms of peace projects, there are so many things you can do. For example, we will be able to put quantum sensors onto spaceborne platforms, and it will monitor the way that the geoid changes. That's going to be transformative. It connects again with dual use because of ISR. But we would actually work on those things together. But the ability to measure our world accurately is part of what we're trying to do. Resilience is really important. Now, I am a pessimist in the sense that I do not think yet we've put enough effort into making our communication systems resilient. That's a serious issue. We talked about post-quantum cryptography earlier. My worry on this is that there are no security proofs for any of the post-quantum. What they are resilient against attacks by Shaw and Grover, but there might be another way of doing it, attacks on shortest lattice vector, and so on. We have not yet put enough emphasis into saying that we need to roll out on the same time scale or faster the defense against these attacks to make it resilient. And that's why I'm a pessimist on that one, because I do not think we've put enough resource in yet in the international community. We talk about the NIST candidature. It's early stage, and we need to do so much more and so much faster.
Thank you so much. Secretary General, I want to come back to you. Often when we think about NATO and new technologies, it's often in a sort of procurement relationship. You're a large buyer, representing large buyers, buying new technology. What I hear here is a bit more of a strategic partnership with the tech industry, but one that you are, I would argue, probably not used to having that type of engagement with. It's a new field. How do you think about NATO and NATO's role, and maybe NATO's how to innovate NATO itself to have that more strategic conversation, collaboration, the partnership in a sort of a changed geopolitical world?
Well, so first of all, we have a strategic relationship with the defense industry and also with the companies like Microsoft, which is not only, as I say, not regarded as defense industry company, but what Microsoft does matters, of course, also for defense and the different defense capabilities. We have had that for many years, but we need to do more. We need to deepen it, and it needs to be dynamic, meaning that, for instance, I totally agree that, of course, elected bodies, governments, parliaments have to set the rules, the laws, the main regulations. But to do so, we need to engage with industry because this is so fast developing technology. So what is right today may be wrong tomorrow, and vice versa. And for me, we have one example, or many examples, but one quite recent example is 5G. Not so many years ago, most NATO allies thought that was only a commercial decision. And it took some time inside NATO, and actually quite tough discussions among NATO allies, whether we were going to have any kind of NATO policy addressing the security aspects of 5G. And then the reality was that it ended concluding with that, yes, of course, 5G is a commercial thing, it's a private thing, there are huge investments, and we have to trust the private sector doing that. But we need to realize the security aspect if our 5G network was controlled and owned by a Chinese company. And that impacted both commercial decisions and government decisions. So I would say the kind of conversation we had among allies, but also between allies and governments and the industry, as we developed our policies as NATO, but also as nations on 5G, is an example of awareness and policy development, proving that NATO also actually have an important role to play in these strategic decisions. Then, if I may add one other thing, and that is that, of course, the war in Ukraine has changed many things. It has also changed the way many of us in this part of the world, in Europe and also in North America, but perhaps in particular in Europe, regard the importance of, or assess the importance of, the defense industry. Mm-hmm. Because I remember, and again, we speak about a couple of years ago, that many investors, and also, those who were ethical, high value, or those ethical investors, they didn't want to invest in defense industry. There were guidelines, there were policies that they shied away from defense industry because that was unethical. And academic institutions didn't want to cooperate with them. And the reality is that one of the key issues now in defending freedom is that we need a vibrant, strong defense industry to deliver what we try to deliver to Ukraine every day. I came actually back from Kiev tonight, or this morning. And the main issue we discussed with President Zelensky is how can we ramp up production, part of a very standardized thing, as 155mm ammunition, but also drones, cyber, more advanced things, and 3G printing. We need investments, we need innovators, we need the academics, we need the private sector, and it's nothing unethical in helping Ukraine defending their freedom. And we have seen now a shift. But again, I don't know who all of you are representing, but actually in a forum like this a couple of years ago, there would have been people who would have shied away from the idea of working with the defense industry. Also, defense is extremely important to protect freedom.
Minister Busko, if today the ethical thing to do is to be part of the defense industry, what do you think are the new values that should shape this type of public-private relationship where the ethical thing is to be part of developing the technological edge. Could you talk a little bit then what are the values we as Denmark and Europe really should be putting into this?
Well, I think, again, as Jens just said, I think it's relatively clear. The world has changed. There's war in Europe. I'm the, so to say, fall of the Berlin Wall generation. I've lived in the iPhone globalization, where my friends, they slept outside the shops where we could buy the new iPhones just to have it first. What we are witnessing now is a complete different world. We have war in Europe. We have daily tensions, growing tensions between China and the U.S. Selected areas where you defend your new technology from other countries or firms to enter the field. So there is a complete other world now. I think what we have to stick to is first and foremost our values, of course. I still believe that I'm still a firm believer of the values that has spread through Europe when we had the fall of the Berlin Wall. I work for them every day, and that's also what we work for in NATO. That's clear. But we are up against regimes, leaders with, a totally other view on how we should develop the world, and that, of course, has to affect our cooperation within the European Union, within NATO especially, and also in the areas where we are trying to form investments, like we are in the area of quantum physics. But there's also a lot of other areas. Being the first with the new offshore windmill is also security. Getting the right components as fast as possible is security. So the world has changed, and that's why we should stand on the values that spread through Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We should fight for them. We should defend them. That's what's actually going on in Ukraine right now. That's what we saw. I was Minister of Defense. Jens and I were discussing this when the Russian we should remember the second invasion of Ukraine 1.5 years ago. That was what we discussed. So I think we should admit the world has changed, and we should see investments and areas that we are discussing here today in that light. That's the way it is.
Thank you. Sir Knight, I want to come back to you. Deep also referred to the famous 1950s letter from Niels Bohr to the United Nations, where he talked about both the promise and perils of nuclear, almost taking the role of a diplomat rather than a professor. Could you talk about the role of the scientific community today in helping not only inform us and help shine light on the technology development, but much more importantly also, what is your role in making this public-private trusted partnership work out?
Well, obviously working between the academic community, the entrepreneurship, startup community, and the investor community is part of what we've been trying to do for a very long time now in quantum, enabling ways in which we remove any barriers between them so that one informs the other. Having spent a long time advising UK government in these sort of technology areas, I will say to those techie people in the audience, people who are not technicians, who are running governments, think we speak in Martian. Okay? We speak a different language, unintelligible, full of mysterious concepts. So clarity of expression about what the technology can do, what it may not do, removing hype, providing assurance on all of these things. The scientific community is eager to do this because, don't forget, the whole principle of scientific research is to check that things are valid and are testable. The Royal Society has a motto, nullius in verba, take no man's word for it. And so part of the scientific community's responsibility in this environment is to provide authority, to provide common sense, and then, God help us, to speak in languages that are intelligible and to have that partnership. The world has changed very dramatically. The scientific community now is much more entrepreneurial. Many of the really great things in quantum technology are emerging from academia, have moved into startups. Here in Denmark, Peter Lodal, who's in the audience, moving and creating Sparrow. In the UK, Steve Brierley moving and creating River Lane, and so on. This entrepreneurial spirit has been a wonderful transformation over the last decade or so in quantum. But using those people as our ambassadors to say, this can be done, that may not be possible, is really important. Looking at capabilities, one of the things I decided a long time ago is when I'm talking to end users in government, don't use the quantum word, it frightens people. Talk about new capabilities, the ability to see the invisible world, to secure your information, to look at your infrastructure. I think we could probably come out of the closet now and talk a bit more about the quantum world without frightening people. But it still is a scary topic. Let's talk about capabilities, and let's be realistic.
We are coming up on time. Jason, I want to give you 15 seconds, maybe just to tell us what is the most important value that Microsoft is going to bring to the table in this.
Well, look, once again, I just want to reaffirm what Professor Knight just said. I think that one of the things that we can do as an industry is make sure that we're being intellectually honest, that we don't go feed a bunch of hype into the system. There's a lot of noise out there in the systems today. We should explain what it can do. We should explain what it cannot do. We explain where it could be in the future. This is why I'm excited about the startup ecosystem in place we have here. Some of the most consequential work that we do in our quantum program is right here in Denmark, has been for years, right down the road in Lyngby, and we're going to continue to do that. So we're excited about the developments that are there. Let's be intellectually honest. Let's work together on what the ethics are. So as tech companies, don't do it because you can. Figure out how you should do things and where the kind of boundaries are first. And then let's get realistic and then pick an incremental path that adds value along the way. I'm a big believer in the States we would call it show me, which I think is the equivalent of that, which is let's go see it work first, and then we will find a path through it.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have come up on time. The world is indeed changing. It requires new ways of working, but with your leadership, I certainly rest assured after this 30 minutes that we are heading the right path. So please give a big applause to the phenomenal panel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.